stop takes us to engagement session. We will have four incredible panelists. Ross Tsai will be our moderator for this session. Ross is a Minnesota resident for 30 years, a talent management executive for Fortune 500 company that has been active, and she has been active community volunteer. Welcome, Ross.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. And it is a distinct honor for me to participate in today's event. And I'm joined by four eminently qualified and distinguished community leaders on this important topic around how our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities can be actively engaged through our civic participation, political engagement, as well as contribution to our local communities. Very briefly, as you can see on the screen, we have in the very beginning, Haipei Xue, who's a national president of United Chinese Americans, which is an organization dedicated to enhancing Chinese communities' participation in our communities at local and national levels. And Mr. Jeff Zhang is a local Minnesota resident, an active community volunteer. In 2020, he ran an ambitious political campaign for a Senate seat in the Minnesota Senate. And lower left corner is Vai Wu, a very distinguished Minnesota Hmong community activist, and he's unselfishly contributed to our community in a variety of services, and recently was a proud delegate as a Minnesota delegate for Joe Biden. And Ms. Wei Molin, a very successful, distinguished global executive for 3M, having had numerous global assignments and leading a very successful large business for 3M Corporation, which also is a very strong and long-term supporter for a lot of the efforts for our Asian communities. So welcome. And with that, given time constraints, I'm not going to go into further detail of introduction. I encourage everyone to get to know these folks in detail, but let me begin the conversation today with Jeff. Welcome, Jeff. As a first generation American, you ran
Ross, you've been cutting out, I think.
I think she might have some connection issue.
Ross, I think I hear you, but not very well. Can you repeat what you just said? We might have a technical difficulty with Ross.
So Chen, can you just speak the
Sure. Okay. Sure. Okay, Jeff, as first generation America, you mounted an enthusiastic campaign for Minnesota Senate in 2020. What lesson and takeaway can you share with us?
Thank you so much, Chen. First, it's a great honor to receive your invitation from MayForum. It's a great honor for me to share my inputs, on topics that are very important for our community today. As a candidate, the year of 2020 is definitely a very challenging year because of the COVID crisis, and even for political candidates, even more challenging. Because of a lot of the limitations. But with the strong support from the community, my team, we still made a very impressive campaign with a lot of positive energy and received a lot of, very good positive comments. And so I want to take this opportunity to thank all my supporters in the community again, to show my deep appreciation of the support of the great volunteer work from our community. And talking about the lessons learned from this campaign, there are many, but today, due to the time limitation, I just want to share two of them. The first is learning from my experience. I believe that for Chinese Americans, as a first generation American, we can definitely consider running for public office. So running a political campaign is challenging, even intimidating, but it's possible and doable if commitment and hard work are there. I couldn't be able to say so because I did it. And I hope, more talents from our community will feel encouraged by my campaign, and also the support from our community behind me, and consider running for a public office. And secondly, running for public office, basically you are seeking a position of a service. So my advice for anyone from our community who want to consider running for public office is to start from the local. Because your local communities, your local community members are your future voters. And those voters, community members, they want to see a candidate who truly care about their community. They want to see a candidate with a spirit of service, and also ideally with a track record of offering service for the benefit of the community. So I would strongly suggest, people consider running for public office. Start from your local community, and do some research about the nonprofit groups or volunteer group, and find one that you feel strongly about, and start to sign up and start to play a contributor role to our local community. And by doing that, it will help the prospective candidate learn a lot about gaining trust and connections from people with different backgrounds, which is so important for a future campaign. Thank you.
Jeff, I think I'm back online. Thank you for continuing the conversation.
Great.
Yeah, this is just the Zoom world that we all live in. But I would love for you to share some specific examples of practical things that you have done in our community and how you have gained from direct exposure in the community. So what are some practical examples you might share with us?
Right. This is a great question. And today our topic is engagement. And I strongly believe that for Chinese American community, we need to start to consider building our community and enhance community engagement, which means not just our local Chinese American community, but also the bigger community where we live. First, we have bigger population of Chinese American living in different cities or school districts. And we need a volunteership to get people organized and form, Chinese American local group or volunteer group, and start to do cultural events or volunteer events to help our local Chinese American resident find a sense of a community and a belonging and start to get involved. And secondly, at the same time, we need to walk out of our local community and start to get involved in the bigger community where we live in. For example, I'm a founder and also the currently vice chair of Eden Prairie Chinese Association. We register as a nonprofit organization, and we use that platform to get hundreds of Chinese American living in Eden Prairie to get involved in local volunteer work, do different cultural events and share our cultures to enrich local diversity. And those kind of things will help our bigger community start to know us as a contributing and involving community members. And we will gain friends, we'll gain trust, we'll gain partners by doing that. And those people who know us will stand with us when needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So key takeaways from this conversation, very inspiring here. One is it is possible. Among our community here, there are many of us who are first generation, and it's inspiring to know that you got to start somewhere. And even as first generation immigrant, it is indeed possible to get involved. And then the second takeaway I'm hearing is start local. Every campaign involves people, and we all need people who are strongest supporters, and the best place to start is within our own community, whether it's your local city or local nonprofit causes. Very, very practical and important perspectives, Jeff. Thank you very much for sharing.
Well, thank you, Roz.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So swinging back to a successful community, I'd love to invite Vayu to join us in this conversation. If you think about our Hmong community in Minnesota, we have one state senator and multiple House representatives and other elected officials at multiple levels in our state. Our Hmong community has truly paved the way for political representation. So Vayu, given that success process, progress, as well as your personal active engagement, what are some success factors that you could share with us around how to gain that progress?
Thank you, Rose. Thank you for having me for this 2021, the MayForum. I'm so happy to be here, and I will give you 3 factors that the Hmong community are based for every single race. So the first factor is that the Hmong community understand that we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere. This is our land, this is our country, and that's the first factor. The second one, the Hmong community understand that who is making decision for us, who is using our tax money to make decision. So we here, we know that to be able to make a decision for people like ourselves, we need to be at a table. So that's very important key, that we want to make sure that the decision reflect the need of the community, not only the Hmong community, but the community at large, and also the, for example, the AAPI community as well. And the third factor is that the Hmong community had a lot of success because we only have 18 last name, 18 clan. So we usually help each other. So we make sure that one of the clan member, the Vu clan, get elected. And maybe next time, if another Yang candidate wants to run, we can help him or her the same way as well. So those are 3 key factors that we use in the Hmong community to make sure that we can promote our people to be at a table.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those perspectives. And I'm sitting here being struck with this perspective that, you know, oftentimes Asian community is seen as an outsider. In the corporate world, we're often seen as outsider as well. So this idea about taking an ownership mindset that this country is also our land, and, you know, understanding that we're either at the table or we're likely on the menu or forgotten, that whole mindset around taking ownership of our own destiny and taking an active engagement in advancing our own causes. It's truly the spirit of democracy. So thank you for sharing that. And I'd love for you to take it a little personal here. We've seen some images, and certainly I've read your bio. You personally have been very, very actively involved. So for those of us who have this aspiration to make an impact in the community, what are your suggestions for how to get started?
To get started, you have to have an interest in civic engagement, and it's a lot of time, and make sure that this is what you want to do for you and for the community. What I would suggest, if you want to run or you want to learn, become a member of a party that represents your value. The platform reflect what you believe in, and that you can put your heart and your soul in that party, and become active, become a volunteer. And if you want to run, your volunteering time will help you to know how to run a campaign. You learn a lot of skill, communicating your idea. Make sure that you clearly express that if you become elected, what would you do for your constituent? And that's the key component of networking. Make sure that you know the people that live in your town, your state, and who will vote for you. Make sure you share your idea, your vision with them before you run, because if you don't have a large network, it's really hard to get elected, especially you are people of color, your skin is different, you know, your accent is different. But if your idea is good, it will overcome all those obstacles. And that's something I would love everyone to understand, that we are here to stay. We are the one who's going to make decisions for ourselves, for our children, future generation to come. And we are part of biking game. We are part of ice fishing trip. We're not going anywhere. So I think that we need to be at the table.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's truly an inspiration for all of us to consider how to take action and add value as either as a candidate or as a volunteer. And I think you and Jeff both have exemplified that commitment and you talk, you walk the talk instead of just talk the talk. So thank you for sharing that. And let me swing the conversation to a broader scope at a more national level. As we all know this, that there is significant political division at the national level, and there is escalating violence against our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. So I'd love to invite Haipei Xue, who's our national president of the United Chinese Community, to United Chinese Americans, to really help us think about what are some of the promising trends as well as best practices across various states and various communities where Asian Americans are really stepping forward and getting engaged.
Well, thanks so much, Ross. Thank you, everybody, to be on this weekend, beautiful afternoon. And especially as somebody from your Minnesota's neighbor, the best neighbor from, I'm a former Wisconsinite. And this is the best of your time in the summer. This is really a fascinating time. And we all know that the Chinese American community has gone through a very difficult time more than any others. Beyond just Asian hate and all of discrimination, that kind of thing, we also have a very getting worse and worse U.S.-China relations on top of that. So I think what I have seen in the last few months are two amazing trends that we need to pay more attention to. Number one, I think finally, the Asian Americans has get into the very center and the front of American political life, and well, at least media attention. So we have been feeling that we are marginalized for all these years and all these decades, and finally, this country has waken up to this thing called Asian Americans. So that is a tremendous opportunity. I think we should make the best out of it. And I do see that many organizations are doing that, including today in 2 hours, there will be some national rally again in the nation's capital. So how to best make use of this new situation? Give you an example. Many business people, I'm talking the very well-to-do business people, up until 1 year ago, maybe you do not want to, when you talk to them, they may not be very much want to engage in political process. Now, last month, you all see that many Asian American, including many Chinese American, very rich businessmen, finally they got together on their own, and they started called a TAF, right? The Asian American Foundation. It's a huge deal. It is all because of this sea change in attitude in our situation, right? Now, second, I think is a very important trend, and we need to be more also pay attention to, is what it is called Asian American Pan-Asian political identity. We have been talking about this for about 4 decades. Now, this Pan-Asian political identity, I think the first events, in my view, is the Wen Shen-Chen events in the early 80s, when he got murdered in Detroit. That got all Asian Americans from all backgrounds come together onto the street, protest. First time they realized there's something called Asian American. Now, I think this time again, for very good reasons, that we again feel that Asian American as a political entity and the force is a real thing. We can feel it, right? So these two trends are amazing thing. And I think we should not lose any opportunity to expand on that. Finally, I think a great trend is going on, especially within the Chinese American community, is, our problem, our promise, and our progress all hinge on one central issues, the civic and the political participation of our community. Our problem is that we are lacking it, especially to our Hmong brothers and sisters. We are way behind even you guys, right? And the Chinese would like to talk, oh, look at how Jewish American, how they involved, we got to learn from them. Yes, to be honest, they are too good for us to learn. I think we can learn something from other brothers and sisters. Our Hmong brothers and sisters in Minnesota and across the country, even, to be honest, even Indian communities are so much more civically engaged and politically participating than our Chinese American community. So we have a clear goal and direction where we're going. And that three things is defining our future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And it's indeed a promising conversation in this moment in time as we recognize that we're awakened to our own challenges, and there are so many success examples that we can learn from. So I really appreciate that broader national perspective, Haipei. Any specific areas that you would call on our community to pay attention to, as in, what are some of the critical gaps and critical factors that you might suggest that we really address as we begin to think about getting more engaged at the civic and political level?
Thanks, Ross. My view is this. I really like to share with everybody here. The key, as I just said, is civic participation. I do think everything that got the Indian community going and got them, in leadership position, in national influence, it's all because we have a stronger democratic and civic participation as their tradition. And that the relative lack of that of Chinese American community is that is the key of everything else. That starts from every one of us to learn how to live in a democracy. To be honest with you, I think we don't have a good understanding of democracy, okay? Because we live in a culture that is a lack of it. Democracy is something that you have to do from bottom up. It is not from what we used to learn, no, up, down. So when you say you bottom up, you really want to be doing something from yourself to the larger society. I think in the 80s, there was a very famous slogan from Tsinghua University that says, 从我做起, 从现在做起, right? And those of you understand that, starting from me and starting from now. That should be our key slogans. I think we should have this better understanding of American politics. And another one is we need to be reaching out. I think we should be reaching out much more. We're talking about that, but we're not really doing a good job on reaching out. Starting with reaching out from our own Chinese American community. I don't want to avoid these issues. We are politically not united, right? And we need to reach out to the left, reach out to the right, reach out to the left, each try to have better understanding of each other. And then we have to reach out to other Asian American brothers and sisters. In the case of Minnesota, absolutely, I think the Chinese and the Hmong community has to have a stronger united voice. And then the last thing we have to reach out is to the general public. It is easier said than done, but we have to do that on a daily basis, starting with just reach out, extend your hand, say hello, what are your problems? What can I do for you? All this sort of attitude, rather than, if it's going to take a change of a Chinese American character, so be it. And we need to be from more 内向, from private person into a more dynamic, public, outgoing personality. And if that takes one generation more to change that, we'll do it.
And I think we're going to learn a lot from our next generation as well. So thank you, Haipei, to kind of inspire us to think about how to get involved. And I'm going to swing the conversation then to more of a professional and corporate setting, because as we all know, many of us who work for our profession, we join organizations where oftentimes there are also systemic barriers for growth and advancement and increase in impact. And as we have seen this year, more and more now, we see CEOs stepping forward to take a stand, and we see corporations making meaningful pledges to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're just very delighted to have Ms. Wei Moline with us as a very senior executive from 3M organization that's based here, but certainly operates at a very global level. And I'd love to invite Wei to share with us some of the trends and best practices that we see at the corporations level. Wei, I would love to hear your thoughts around what are leaders doing, what are corporate leaders doing, and what they should be doing to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporate America.
Thank you, Ross. I think many companies have their individual cultures, and these are defined cultures. At 3M, that we value inclusion, and inclusion is actually one of the 4 pillars of our corporate culture. So we're focusing on cultivating a connected community and really seeking and celebrating diversity. So diversity and inclusion intuitively really maximize the human talents. And then we are focused on STEM education, so drive innovation, that you have to have that diversified talents and to maximize the human capability at advanced societies. So let me just make a comment as a new immigrants. As new immigrants to United States, that our Asian culture, our education, really are emphasized on conformities. I call it conformities. And this kind of a trait really help us to assimilate to this mainstream society relatively easily. So maybe we're the token good minorities, I would say. However, these traits does not always help us to advocate for ourselves as individuals or as a group, as a community, as many of the previous speakers has mentioned about this, because this trait across many Asian cultures. So we need to be highly aware of that. That is, could help us, but also kind of damper down our community impact and individual growth. So as a women executive, there's even less people look like me in a corporate world. So you can call it the glass ceiling or the bamboo ceiling. These are real in our society. So as an executive, I really choose to invest in mentor programs. This is what I do daily. Because who I am, what I look like, I naturally attract people who have similar backgrounds or people who physically look like me. And these are professionals in the workplace, and they need mentors to actually to listen to them, to seek, to understand their concerns and advocate for them. I treasure these kind of opportunities because I learn from these people, and I'm actually a reverse mentee in many of the cases. I treasure these kind of connections because I can help the next generations of professionals to grow. And so there'll be more people look like me and have a common background at the top of the corporate world to represent our group and to make sure these talents are not being ignored, are actually the capability and is maximized. So we are doing so is helping us to build the next generations of leaders, of diversified leaders as well. So I would encourage AAPI participants here and the professionals really actively to be a mentor. And you don't have to be an executive to be a mentor, because many of us are in critical positions in our professions. So it's important that you become a mentor and then also participate in the community and contribute. This way, naturally, that you are making connections and making a bigger impact as well.
Mhm. Thank you, Wei. You know, I feel like we could have this conversation for hours and hours, because all of you, from Jeff to Vayu to Haipei and certainly Wei, all of you have such tremendous experience and lessons learned in life, as well as just inspiration for so many of us. So in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap this up to summarize my key notes here. That one, take an ownership mindset, that this is our land, this is our destiny, and we are not here, we're not entitled to wait for others to make things better for ourselves, and whether it's on the civic side or on the professional side. And great insights and great advice around not only making ourselves more successful and more impactful through self-advocacy, through engagement, but also reaching out broadly in our own community, across our communities, and across generations to benefit others as a way to contribute to society. So with that, I'm gonna thank my panelists. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And Chen, I'm gonna send it over back to you and continue with our conversation.
Thank you so much, Ross.
Thank you.
That was a great job. That was fantastic. Thanks to all the panelists. I think we learned a lot from your experience and your wisdom. Now we will have the session in Life in Minnesota. I'll be the moderator for this session.